Hi everybody. Bold Girls, one of the key things is obviously conflict. So this is just going to be a very, very short video, just one more slide, just talking about some of the examples of conflict that you want to make sure you get your head around. It is the kind of thing that could in theory come up in the exam, so you want to make sure that you've got a kind of good understanding of the different ways in which conflicts sort of manifest themselves in the play, I suppose. So the obvious one is that kind of the big conflict in society, right? This is all taking place amidst, arguably, certainly for people in this country, the conflict that's been closest to home for them, the most identifiable, a decades-long civil war, effectively. So the fact that it takes place within that is relevant, but interestingly, in most cases, actually, probably the thing people are really interested in is the conflict between the characters. Now, there are a couple of others as well, like the conflict between sort of dreams and reality, but I'll deal with that with themes in another video. But think about the conflicts that exist, and particularly, what can be useful is actually try and map them out. One thing I would sometimes do in class is give people big A3 sheets of paper and actually have a single sheet of paper on which they have mapped out the character conflicts that exist. So there's obviously conflict between Marie and Deirdre because of who Deirdre is, where she's come from, and Marie's attempt to hold on to these idealized views of her husband, even though, as she admits at the end, she always knew that it wasn't really true, that she was clinging onto these things for other reasons. Marie and Cassie, again, obviously, Cassie had an affair with Marie's husband and tells her about it at the end. So what's sometimes interesting to do is to look through a text once you understand something. So once you've read it all the way through and you get that thing about the conflict between Marie and Cassie, go back to the start of the play and do a reading of the play in which the only thing you are interested in is looking at the relationship between Marie and Cassie, and looking to see if you can see examples of when the conflict that really sort of emerges at the end, maybe there are things that happen earlier on that, now that you know what you're looking for, that maybe hint towards it, maybe nudge you in the idea that there's something going on between the two of them. Cassie and Deirdre is one of them that you get a really good example of that. So we know from what happens in the club that Cassie tries to attack Deirdre, and we figure out that she talks about, I saw you in a car with a man, and then later on we hear about the affair. It all kind of comes together. Deirdre was threatening Cassie with the truth. She was going to tell everybody that Cassie had had an affair with Michael. But see, if you look back into scene one, and look at the way Cassie reacts when Deirdre appears, and look at her sort of attitude towards her and Deirdre's attitude towards Cassie, you start to see the sort of earlier threads of that conflict, even though it isn't really obvious when we read scene one. Once we've read the whole play, then reread scene one in that context, you understand a little bit more about how that conflict has developed through the course of the play. And another one that's really interesting is Cassie and Nora. It's probably the most consistent one. Their conflict goes from the start to very near the end, and you see it again. It's mostly manifested in just the way they interact with each other. You see it in scene one, right at the start, when Nora's asking Cassie questions, and she's basically ignoring her. You see it in scene two in the club with Nora having a go at Cassie about, it's that kind of what will people be saying about you and about us sort of thing, because Nora's somebody who cares very, very much about appearances. And then it all kind of kicks off in scene four when Cassie and Nora, when the real root of their conflict seems to become clear, and it's about differing views, competing views of individual men, i.e. Cassie's father, Nora's husband, and also what seemed to be sort of competing views of what are appropriate expectations for women. Look at the way Nora talks to Cassie, essentially saying to her, you should have just been grateful. It doesn't matter if you don't like your husband. You should just be grateful that he doesn't hit you, for example. There's definitely something in that as well about these competing views of men individually and collectively in terms of relationships. So as I say, important to try and understand each of these, having notes on the conflict. I do recommend that I get a big A4 sheet of paper or two A4 put together to make a big A3 sheet, and actually try and map out the different conflicts on the one page, kind of arrows between characters, stuff like that. And you might find that helps you to wrap your head around some of the key parts of the the text as a whole. Okay.